Boom. Okay, welcome to the Grizzly Growl. I am your host, Flynn Heathcliff, and today I am here with a very special guest, Dr. Brandon Lewis, Associate Professor in the School of Education, Director of the African Male Initiative Elite Scholars, which I was a part of, and still am a part of, former advisor of 8 years for Black Student Union, and a human being trying to make sense of the world. How you doing, Dr. Lewis?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for the invitation, Flynn.
Of course. I had to reach out to you because I saw you a few weeks back at, what is that event? I think it was March Through the Arch. And I realized as much as we've been asking students about their experience with COVID as far as classes and outside of the classroom challenges, professors have been challenged as well, and it's been a learning curve, and y'all have had to adjust, and we're kind of all in this together. So I wanted to bring you in and get your perspective on that as well.
Well, I thank you for that.
So let's just hop straight into it. During COVID, the first semester it hit, which was almost 2 years ago, before classes started, so we were in person, and then COVID hit, and then we were out of class for some weeks. Do you remember that time period?
I do remember that. As a matter of fact, I remember that very well because a student came to me and said, "Hey, Brandon, do you think that we're going to have to miss class, or do you think this is going to impact us a lot?" And I said, "Oh, well, we have a lot of different, things that happen, catastrophes that happen in the world. And, I think we'll be okay, so, I mean, let's keep moving forward. And if I hear anything, I'll let you know." And that was the last time that I saw her face to face. And I felt like an idiot because I was kind of playing it down a little bit, like from the standpoint of, you have these big scares that have always happened, whether it be like the flu virus, and all, you can go through a list of things, and I was sitting here thinking like, oh well, yeah, this is the newest craze, this is the newest thing for us to be nervous about. And it turned out to be a lot more serious than what I thought, you know what I mean? So I kind of compare it to, quite frankly, I would imagine at the time of what the bubonic plague, of what individuals were feeling like, people of the world of that day were feeling like, particularly those that had the media, or those that had, not media in the standpoint of what we know of, but just those that were in the know of knowing like this something's going on in our world. And so I was kind of just, this is a moment in time, a blimp in our existence, and it's going to blow over. And I think that's what we're experiencing still. But at the same time, at the time that the student asked me, I played it down way too much, because the following week we were out, and after that it went straight to virtual. So yes, to answer your question, I remember that time.
So when we first went online and you first got the word that no more in-person classes, what was going through your head?
It was a lot of anxiety because we had a lot of emails that were happening. We had directives, coming from admin, and it was just, and then all of a sudden it was like, hey, you need to be able to learn some of these different systems that are going to be created to kind of help you, right? And while I think Zoom might have been a thing, but it was not popular. And then you had Blackboard discussion. I believe that we had already had, if I'm not mistaken. But it was things that I never really had to worry about. Even though I taught hybrid classes, a lot of the stuff that I did was so like face to face, and it would be like, oh well, we'll do this on this hybrid day, and then we'll just check back in, next week when I see you face to face. It was so. I'll be honest with you, and I'm not just saying this as a way to protect myself from a university level. I think that the university had steps in place if you were adhering to the things that they send you. It's just, for me, I'm such a face-to-face person and things of that nature. And even though I taught hybrid and whatnot, it was like, well, I'm really face-to-face, and I'll give you these assignments, I'll give you these things, and we'll check back in or whatnot. Or I'll post something on D2L, and we can correspond that way. But as far as this entirely new platform, well, it really wasn't new, but this platform that we're now being asked to use for our main sort of like dialogue and discourse, I was not prepared. And so, yeah, there was anxiety. And it's interesting that you asked me that, because I still remember calls from professors. Everybody was frantic. Everybody was like, oh, my God, what does this mean? And how long do you think it'll last? But the funny thing is, Flynn, you asked me the question from the standpoint of, you've talked to students and what they were thinking. Well, on the professor side, I would imagine that 99.9% of us we're probably like having some angst and or anxiety and trying to figure out this unknown. Anytime you deal with anything that's in the unknown, you have to try to it's kind of like you're building a house as you're just going with it, or you're laying these bricks and walking this path as you're moving, but you don't really know the course, the direction completely of what it's going to end up like. And so I think everybody was a little nervous.
I'm glad you mentioned other professors, because like I said, my perspective was solely from the students. And now I'm not a student, I'm still staff. Well, now I'm staff, not still staff, but even now my perspective is mostly of the students, because I was recently a student. I surround myself with my students all the time, so I know their perspectives. I know how excited they are to be back in person, but I never really was familiar with how this experience affected professors and how y'all had to adjust, especially in those gap weeks. Because if you remember, we didn't just go straight from in-person to online. There was maybe a 2, 3, maybe 4 week gap. And for us, that was like a vacation. It was like spring break. What, on the professor side of things, what happened during those gap weeks?
So that's sort of like a multi-level question. And what I mean by that is, I don't remember it being 4 weeks of just this incommunicado to where we weren't talking to meeting. I do remember where we were not meeting. They had shut it down. And so this is jogging my memory of what that experience was like. I do remember there were some classes canceled while we were trying to figure this thing out and so forth. So I'll just take it there. And I'll say that, quite frankly, if you want my honest opinion, and I'd venture to say that a lot of people probably felt like that on a professor level, although I do want to make sure that I comment that I am not the voice of all professors. Mm-hmm. I'm only the voice of Brandon Lewis. And for me, I was truly taking the time to concern myself with my family, my loved ones, my friends, the world, society, community. I was watching the news. I was, I think I was kind of on the late freight as far as trying to educate myself on just what COVID was and all of that. So I'd say that for me, I was trying to, hey, if this is what it is, I love being a professor, but I love more being a husband and a father and a son and a brother and a cousin and a great friend, and I love a lot of people. So I would say that my main concern was that. Of course, professorship, just like any job or anything like that, if you can find something that you love, which I do, of course you think about it, and you think about your students. You think about, is everybody healthy? You don't want to get any emails that say, hey, we have a loss at GGC or whatnot. So of course I did not want that. So there was a concern there, but my main concern primarily was just making sure that that I'm, here as long as I can for my kids and for my wife and things like that. You know what I mean? So so the actual job was not the concern. The idea of being a human being living in this world at this particular time and dealing with this catastrophe and things that were presented. How do we survive this? And you know what I mean? And so that's really where my mind was. It was not the idea of, if it's the idea of being a professor, the only thing that I could do as a professor at that time was, just like as a teacher, you wear many hats, right? It's not just, doing instruction and engaging and, but it's building. It's building friendships, it's care, it's a lot of other things. So I'd say that those other things that are sort of mixed in with this job, and it's not even, I don't want to use the word job, I'd say mixed in with this, I don't know, life choice, this entity, this sense of like just being, as a teacher, it's not just a job. So I'd say, so doing all of that, my main concern was just being there. And if somebody wanted to talk or needed to talk or whatnot, I wanted to make sure that I was available to speak to people as we were all dealing with this. So it's a little difficult to answer that question. Now, if you're asking me specifically from a professor's sense, if you want to know the truth, since you're asking me, and I'm being recorded, and hopefully I don't get in trouble.
No, you won't.
The idea of doing things that you're supposed to do as a professor, and in regard to turning in things and paperwork and some things that could just kind of come up. I really wasn't concerned, actually, to the least, with any of that. My main concern was surviving, making sure I'm there for people, making sure that I still have, I'm showing this empathetic thing, this empathetic space of like, hey, let's talk. Hey, I'm feeling this way too, but how can we talk to each other and somehow try to get to a level of understanding to where all of our voices are heard, and we're just working through this, because at the end of the day, Flynn, we're all human beings. You know what I mean? So, and it showed me that at any drop of a dime, all this stuff can be taken away. You know what I mean? This whole idea of what we call an institution of learning, or grocery stores, or you know how that was, grocery stores, and going to fight for, milk and toilet paper and all this stuff, and you can always be one step away from mass hysteria. You know what I mean? And so, and then another thing that you think about is, I'm looking at this as far as like my context and where I am within America, with the banner of, the greatest nation on earth, but what about other places that aren't afforded the same opportunities that I have? What does that mean for them? Even though I have to wait in a long line, or even though I have to let somebody grab something that I wanted and it's the last thing, it's like, you know what I mean? But what if you're standing outside and you're waiting for a plane to drop things down to, you know what I mean? And then what does that look like? And so I try to keep a certain perspective that, I have it bad, but I might not have it bad as someone else. And so I have to be thankful for what I have, and just try to make sense of it all. And that's really where my mind frame was. And I really wasn't worried about, and I love GGC. I was worried about the students, but I wasn't worried about the GGC as an institution, where I was. And GGC, I love you. And if anybody's listening to this, please know that's just how I was feeling that time. And I want to be as authentic in this interview as I possibly can. So
we gonna get you out of here. But so
that's where I was. But this is very therapeutic for me, because you're helping me relive certain things of how I felt. You know what I mean?
It's that period of time, and it's funny I say that period of time as if it was just that semester, but really it's still going on.
We haven't even gotten there yet. I'm letting you control the interview, but if you want to talk about how things have moved since then, we could talk about that. whenever you're ready. But it's been a whirlwind. And you know what? And one thing about me, I'll say this: it's interesting that when all of that was happening, and I mean, it's like, well, what do you do as a professor? Like, what do you really do? Like, right? And what I mean is, you still have these assignments out there. You still have these things because if you look at it from like an institutional level, right? Every institution has things that connect to it, right? There's all these like moving parts. And so you have accreditation. So we could talk about SACS, right? The Southern Accreditation, colleges, universities, and all this different stuff of things that you have to do. You could talk about just pretty much all of it. It gets to this whole, I don't want to use the term bureaucratic. I'll just say it gets into like this space to where there are things that you have to do as a student, as a professor, as an institution, to show that you're producing good work and that this person is qualified to get a degree and all this stuff, right? So you have all these different board of regents and whatnot, right? And so Flynn, to your question, your original question, I'm sorry for that noise in the background. To your original question, it's like, okay, well, you're dealing with all this, right? And somebody's saying, hey, I can't turn this in. Somebody has COVID. Now, as a regular professor, I mean, if you're doing it in normal times, you work through that and you say, okay, when can you turn it in? Or if you're really stern as a professor, you say, hey, well, this is the deadline, refer to the syllabus. And you can, I mean, it just depends on what kind of professor you are. You know what I mean? So for me, I always make sure I talk to people. I want to show empathy and whatnot. So like, hey, okay, well, let me know what's going on. How can I help you or whatnot? But in that situation, it was like, well, I can't turn this in, my dad just got COVID, or my grandmother just got COVID, or my cousin, whatever it is, or I got COVID, right? And so it's like, okay, well, now I can't turn this in. But this is a major piece to you graduating to make sure that you are accredited from all these different little entities that sort of comprise like what goes into you getting a degree. So it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that I hand out a degree? Well, no, I'm not handing out a degree. I can't hand out a degree because you look at what's going on. I'm dealing with what's going, this current moment in the current time. And so, but then to your point, if you look at it from a psychological level, it's like, okay, well, are the eagles upstairs looking at this and saying, okay, well, you're not being as proficient or as, like making sure that everybody's doing all this stuff on a deadline and or turning these things in, and you have to do this. So if they're late or if I'm excusing, what does that mean for me as a professor? Am I now going to get fired? And so when all this stuff is over, now I don't have a job. And so to your point or to your question, what I try to do is anytime I got like those emails of like, I'm having this going on, the number one thing that I try to show was like my empathy, care, love, just for humanity, and saying, hey, all right, I'm going to give you an incomplete because that's what I have to do. I have, let me at least give you an incomplete. And then when you're feeling better or whatever, let's talk through this and you could turn it in. You know what I mean? Or, hey, I'm running late. Hey, so what? So am I. I'm running late too. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, all this stuff. So at that specific moment, the only thing that I was trying to do was show understanding. Because I'm trying to understand as well. So how could I say, oh no, this is when it's due, this is blah 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 blah, the whole little thing of sometimes how professors do. No. At this moment, all of us are trying to figure this out. So that's really kind of how I operated. And hopefully that answers your question in that very long-winded response that I gave. And I'm sorry for that.
No, you're good. I think you brought up a really good point. From the student's perspective, it was very confusing. It was almost like hell, if you want me to be honest.
I can imagine.
Because myself, I'm not. I was never really the hardest working student. I did what I had to do to succeed, get A's and B's. But there was a learning curve. And if you had a certain type of learning style, if you were more visual, then you really suffered because there were not too many physical representation. And even in the classroom, sometimes there's not that much visual stimulation and representation. So it's hard to really see something in your mind and conceptualize it and understand it. And online, it just made it more difficult because in Zoom or Collaborate or Teams, you're looking at your screen all day, which, hurts your eyes. And there's only so much that they can show you. Right. And sometimes there's connection issues, so people are lagging in and out, or videos are lagging, things aren't uploading. Could you speak about, I guess, that learning curve? Because,
oh Lord,
because that was a real thing. That was definitely a real thing.
Oh man, so I'm just trying to think about how to put this into words. It completely disrupted my pedagogical approach of how to work with students, but it also, I think, it made me better in a sense, right? Even though I hate to admit that, it made me better. And what I mean by that is okay, now I'm staring at this, like you said, this whole screen. Now I got to teach multiple classes, 3 or 4 classes, right? And I'm dealing in a situation now to where all the screens are black. Even though if I say, hey, this is a community here, because that's how I teach my classes. Mm-hmm. We're a community, you know what I mean? In this given space, at this given moment, we are all in this journey together at this time. And so, let's see each other. Let's talk with each other. Let's experience with each other. All of us are bringing all this knowledge. And it's so appreciated, right? So, but now I'm staring at black screens. Now I'm staring at all these internet issues. Now I'm staring at all these hey, I can't make class because of. Now, I'm dealing with, this idea again of how do you facilitate and navigate through this space. So to your point, it was very difficult for me, and I hated it. I hated the idea of going from a situation to where it's interactive, it's live, and you're able to have this proximity with students. I'm able to do culturally responsive pedagogy or social justice sort of education or multicultural ed, or you know what I mean. I'm able to facilitate or critical pedagogy. Right, I'm able to navigate through this stuff, right? And I think that to your question, some students were able to respond very well, and I still had some really good classes for what it was worth, right? So, and I don't want to demean that. I don't want to diminish what we were still able to do at that time. Mm-hmm. However, for me, it hurt my heart that, I'm not able to do all the things that I would typically do in a live classroom. The idea of cooperative learning, you can do breakout sessions, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's kind of like this, Flynn. I put it to you like this: since you are a hip hop guy, maybe this is an analogy that I can provide that will connect with other people. Or even if you're not a hip hop person, maybe you're a rock, maybe you're a folk, maybe you're country, maybe you're a gospel, maybe whatever. Musically inclined. But you can branch off and look at other things as well, right? So let's say that you're in a jam session, right? If you're mm-hmm. rock or folk or whatever, or let's say you're in a cypher if you're hip hop. Imagine doing that when you're all online on Zoom, and that's what you're doing.
Yikes!
Right? And now compare that to the energy that you feel, right? Not only see, but the energy that you feel from another human being, right? Imagine this idea of I'm gonna connect your words, and it's I'm in this cipher, and it's we're all in there bobbing our heads and things like that, right? And so you take all that away, and really going back to your point, you're staring at this little this little box, this little computer, you know what I mean? And it's supposed to, or it's doing its best to substantiate or qualify what you typically do, but it just doesn't. It's not the same. There's no way that anybody could tell me it's the same. And one person could say, well, yeah, but hey, it makes it a lot easier because now I don't have to go here. Now I can dress like this, and I had those moments for a minute. You know what I mean? To where it's like, oh man, I don't have to drive to campus. I don't have to do this, you know. However, you know, you have that moment to where it's kind of like a yin and yang sort of thing, to where there's some positive to where it's like, oh man, I don't have to do this. I don't have to go to this meeting. I can do this on Zoom, and I can black it out. You know, I can do all this stuff. But are you really receiving everything that's there at that moment, at that time, right? Are you receiving what's going on in the class at that moment? Because there's a lot of things, even if you have a bad professor, a good professor, or whatever, you're still connecting energies with somebody that's next to you, you know what I mean? Or you're still getting something out of it. Whereas, I mean, think about it, man. I literally saw it, Flynn, to where somebody that I knew would put their stuff on. It was a good friend of mine. I was visiting him. And he decided to go back to college, and he's a face-to-face type of guy, and I won't say his name or institution, but nevertheless, I was over there visiting him just to make sure he was good. Hey, it was masked on, and to make sure that I do all these things to make sure everybody knows that I was good and safe. But I went to visit him, and I was like, hey, I need to go to the store, so I'll be back. He's like, hey, I'm gonna go with you. And I was like, well, you're in class. He was like, no, I'm gonna just put it on mute, right? And I thought about that as a professor. Because this was during the time to where, hey, I'm teaching classes like this, right? And I'm looking at this guy and the professor. He's giving his heart out. He's really trying as hard as he can to make it engaging, to make it like just giving all of himself. Long story short, right? And here it is. This individual that I was visiting was like, hey, let's go to the store. I'm just gonna black it out. And I felt so incomplete because of the fact my being was disrupted, right? Because I thought about myself giving my all, and I thought about all these black screens that I see, and I started questioning, well, who was doing this to me, or not doing this to me? Excuse me, who's doing this at this time to where they just put it on the screen now? But then you have to associate the idea, going back to your point, well, maybe they don't have good connection. So, hey, we don't need to all run our screens together because that's gonna eat up this connection issue and stuff like that. So it's kind of like where you have to kind of do it, but then at the same time, then you start asking yourself, well, who's really into this? Who's really receiving, and not only receiving, but giving? Because it's not a thing to where, you know, I teach, you do. You know, we're all receiving. You know what I mean? For example, Flynn, if you were in my class, hey, I'm receiving information from you, right? Because that helps me grow as an individual, as a person, if you want to say a professor, as a father, as a person that's just existing in this world. At this moment in time that I have you on this journey, I want to receive what I can. But in this space, if people are putting it on the black screen and they're not talking and you're trying to get people to kind of be engaged, but then you have individuals that say, hey, I'm going to the store, you know, like whatever, I'm still going to get an A. You know, how do you deal with that? You know what I mean? So, so to your question, and it may have gotten lost in all of this based off my answer, I'd say that, you know, it was complex. It was difficult for all of us. And it's a moment that I really I'm still reliving, not in the same space, not in the same situation, but I'm still reliving it. I mean, I'm still existing in this because, you know, we haven't figured this out. You know what I mean? And then not only that, you know, with masks, with you know, just my well-being, my safety. You know, I think about that when I go into the classroom each and every time. If I go in here and now I go back. And this is not for naysayers. This is, I mean, I don't want to like target anyone. I'm just saying what I'm thinking or how I'm feeling and how I feel like now connected to then. It's changed, but it really hasn't, because hey, I still go to the store and I'm still worried about, hey, what if I bring this home to my 10-year-old and my 7-year-old? Or 11-year-old now, excuse me, 11-year-old and 7-year-old. What if I contract this and I give it to students? You know what I mean? What if somebody's in here now, or me, is in here right now, and let's say that I'm not showing any symptoms or any signs, I'm asymptomatic or whatever it may be, but maybe I have it, and because of who I am, because of the teacher that I am, hey, my proximity was just a little too close, and for some reason this person contracted something off of me. Does that mean that we need to change up everything? Well, no, because again, everything is the yin and the yang, man. I love the idea that I'm actually seeing people now, and that I have a sense, not a compulsory sense, like to where I'm mandating, I'm ordering these things to where you have to do, but like just I have a sense of like, hey, I'm connected to somebody. This person and I am receiving this educational space right now, and we're learning together. Now, is it still complicated and still complex, and are there still a lot of things that are going on? Multiple variables that are associated with this. Absolutely. So I still have to figure this out. Not only I, because there is no I. I am for we are. We are therefore for I am, which is the African proverb. We are all in this together. And so what does that mean? When somebody says something, do I say, oh, well, no, you still need to do this even though now we're face to face? No, absolutely not. We're all still dealing with this, so it's very much connected. You know what I mean? So I dropped the mic on that one. That's where I am, and I don't know if I made sense of that. I don't know if I answered your question, but I'm just trying to be as real and authentic as I can about how I felt and how I continue to feel.
Well, let me ask you a question, because like I said, this is the first time that I'm receiving the perspective of someone who's not a student. And I'm not even talking about staff and faculty. Even though I work in student involvement, I kind of seen a little bit of it, but I don't truly know the perspective of staff and faculty. And once again, I don't expect you to speak on behalf of all the professors, only really yourself, but from what you've experienced and what you've seen, do you feel like professors have had an outlet to express themselves like this? Like the way you're doing right now, in a very open sense, and expressing their experience, their COVID experience, their teaching online experiences. Do you feel like there was a forum for that?
So I would say that
and be honest.
No, hey, you never have to worry about that with me. So I would say, as in all things, I think there's a yes and a no. All right, this is the best analogy that I can give you. I'm not gonna go full into it. You know what I mean? Because I know that what that means for me, as far as me just talking and sometimes not coming up with what I really want to say. But it's kind of like this, Flynn. Black Lives Matter, Me Too, workers' rights, any of these, if I didn't include a particular cause, please don't blame my heart, blame my mind. But there's all these things that happen in our world. I mean, I can go through just not even in an American context, worldwide. There are issues with humanity, right? And there always will be, and there always have been. That's just one of the states of just how we live, right? Man's humanity toward man, right? Or man and woman, and however you describe yourself, you know what I mean? It's always an idea of humanity, to where there's always going to be something, all right? So the idea of just being a human being, right? So there are these issues that come up. And so think about this, Flynn. Whether it be, something that's going on in another country, whether it be LGBTQIA plus rights, whether it be Black Lives Matter, whether it be anything, right? There are vehicles that are there, that are out there, that I see, that I don't necessarily partake in from the standpoint of, now I might give a donation behind this. It's kind of like Sidney Poitier. Sidney Poitier was not. Oh, see, I told you, don't ask me questions, and I get into a whole nother thing, But there's many ways to be active, But at the same time, when you're in a professional level, it's kind of like what Tupac said. Tupac Shakur once said, you're going to be as active as you possibly can, but usually around 25, 26, it cuts off. I'm paraphrasing, but usually about 25, 20, because you get into your family, you start thinking about other things. So to your question, I would love to be out there on the scene. It's right there in the front, hand up in the air, and I'm doing all this stuff, but what does that mean for me representing GGC? What does that mean for me, letting everybody know my political, my social, my just, any stance that I have as a person and putting that out there? Well, that's great. And I love it. And when I was younger, I was much more adamant about it. I didn't care. But now, when you have mortgage payments and car payments, it's kind of like the system can kind of and I don't want to just blame it on a system. I'm just saying your mind, which can also be connected to the system, it goes different places to where, well, if I do these things, what does that mean for my family? What does that mean for my well-being? And so to your question, as simply as I can put it, I feel like there have been a lot, man, I can tell you the number of emails that I got about COVID as being a professor. Matter of fact, there's a Facebook group to where professors have talked about this. From you could go GGC, Georgia State, UGA, whatever. If you're looking at it in Georgia, if you're looking at it nationally, there's places there. If you're looking at it worldwide, there's places there, right? So, yeah, but now, to your question, have there been spaces? You're the first person that's actually contacted me to say, hey, can you do an interview about this? Which felt good for me, right? And I'm sure that other people have had the same moment, maybe on a smaller scale, maybe on a larger scale, maybe the same scale, but scales really don't matter. At the same time, your voice is included and it's recorded. So it really doesn't matter about a scale, right? So I would say that, yes, there have been spaces that have been offered. However, you have to really think about it in your mind of okay, well, what is this going to mean? Could I possibly, is it rendered to where I might have some type of problem or trouble, or am I going to say too much if I'm too open? So now let me guard what I'm going to say, right? So now, if I'm going to guard it, let me just not even be a part of it, because I'd be doing more to hurt this cause as opposed to help it. So to your point, or to your question, yes, there's been spaces that have been offered. However, at least from where I sit, there's been a lot of people that have been trying to do exactly what you're doing, and whomever else is working with you on this. But it needs to be a lot more spaces that are offered for this, right? And the only thing that you can ask people to do is just be as honest as they can. Kind of like what you did for me a little minute ago. You want to, but then even if you ask that question, there's still going to be that systematic thing that's in your mind. Oh, okay, yeah. But are you really being as honest as you can? And so it's difficult. It's difficult. You know what I mean? Because like even right now, me saying certain things, am I going to be on CNN or Fox? Or is the governor going to get mad at me? If I'm saying certain things, as a professor, there's certain weight that comes with this. And so what does that mean? But the only thing that I can truly do is be as authentic as I can. And so hopefully that answered your question, man. Yes, there have been things that have been offered. There were a lot of things that have been offered. You know what I mean? There's a lot of organizations that have offered spaces like this, or you know what I mean? Do you always get the invite, or are you reading someone else's words, and what do those words mean to you? You know what I mean? All that stuff comes into play. But yes, there have been spaces that have been offered, but I'd also say there's a thing of authenticity to where it does complicate it, and there's a vehicle of access to where it's there's not enough. I don't want to say there's not enough. I'll say this because it doesn't sound as harsh. I'd say there needs to be more.
That's very interesting, honestly. And my response to that would be, especially about the honesty part, I feel like in order for us to make adjustments, and the theme of teaching online and changing your teaching style and adapting is really that, is being able to adapt. It's being able to go into a different space and still succeed, still achieve your goal and your purposes. And I think for us,
may I interrupt you, Quinn? I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Flynn. May I interrupt you real quick? So think about this. And then I want you to continue with your question. And I'm sorry, but hey, you asked. I have a lot. Yeah, I talk a lot. And my brain works a lot, and that was very rude for me to interrupt you. But I just had a moment in this space, in this connection that you and I are talking, and sometimes that happens when you're in dialogue or discourse or whatnot. And I'm older now, so I don't want to forget this. Think about this. I kept my job, Flynn. I'm still getting paid. My family is I mean, I don't want to say we're good from the standpoint of we're still dealing with the situation, and my kids are in a school to where, they're catching COVID left and right in there and things like that. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, I have a job, not based off, how smart I am or nothing like that. It's just for whatever reason, like the job that I have has allowed me to continue to exist, and I continue to have a paycheck, right? I want you to think about this too, because we're talking about just the professor thing and the GGC thing, right? So imagine the staff, some of the staff that may work at GGC that lost their jobs. I'm not sure. I don't know the numbers. I mean, and maybe nobody lost their job, and that would be great on GGC. It would be great for that person to where they're still able to do it. But guess what? If nobody's there, and you have these certain jobs that are specifically aligned to people being there, and you have to do these things based off of their placement in these institutions or whatnot, or at this locale. Well, imagine that's one thing, right? But imagine outside jobs. Imagine how many people lost their jobs to COVID, right? And so I'm up here talking about, oh man, yeah, my family's good, and I'm doing great, and oh, that's greatness. Oh, it was difficult for me, but at the same time, hey, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Now, at the same time, housing market, the interest rates went down. You know what I mean? People are buying houses left and right at this time. Because, but if I lost my job, I can't do that anymore because because even with COVID, if you lose your job, and now they have COVID relief, but you're already in. That gets me down a whole nother. That gets me down a whole nother lane. Let me stick to what I was saying. What I'm saying, Flynn, is you're asking the professor, how they feel about this. You're asking students how they feel about this, right? And that's greatness, because that is a voice. These are voices that need to be heard. Right? But at the same time, I can't speak without acknowledging all of the people, millions, that are not in this position that I'm in, or not even a position that you were in as a student, right? Mm-hmm. To where they lost their entire income or way of living, way of life, and like, well, what do I do now? Well, how do I survive? How do I survive? Not only I, but the we for my family. How can we make this work? You know what I mean? So it's like, that's a whole nother conversation that I feel like needs to be at least acknowledged. That, yeah, hey man, I'm still here. I'm still good. I've bought houses. I do real estate. I sell a lot of real estate. You know what I mean? And people have bought houses during this time. But go to that person that lost their job, and now they haven't been employed in a year. You know what I mean? And they're trying their hardest. And these are hard workers. Well, what does that mean for them? Are they now considered lazy because now they don't make money? That's what society usually does. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's a much bigger conversation, or a much bigger thing that I don't have all the knowledge to talk about. But I feel like it at least needs to be expressed. That during this conversation, me and you want to acknowledge, these other spaces too, to where, man, it's hard for everybody. And outside of the institution, what does that look like for people that go to a job and now all of a sudden, hey, you don't have this job anymore because we can't afford you, right? Or what does it mean to a person to where that's trying to work as hard as they can, right? And it has multiple jobs, 3 or 4, and trust me, that's out there, 3 or 4 jobs, right? But now the school, you can't drop your child off at school. Somebody has to be home with your child. Somebody has to be home with your child. Now I'm going to give you a little relief. I'm going to give you a little $600, $1,200, whatever it may be. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to give you a little something, and that's cool, man. That's great. But that's only a third of what I can really do. You know what I mean? Now for me, that received some assistance, that's awesome. You know what I mean? Because it did help. It helped. But at the same time, that same help, and I don't want to get into the whole idea of socialism and all that stuff. You know what I'm saying? What I want to do with me interrupting you, and again, I apologize for that. What I want to do is at least just state that this is a conversation that we're having amongst, at least me, at least Brandon Lewis, even though I've never been privileged in my life, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. As a black male growing up in America and things like that. But at the same time, I've been privileged because I've been light skinned. I've been privileged because of my hair. I've been privileged because of a lot of my nose features. I've been privileged because of a lot of things, right? But at the same time, when we're talking about economics, I'm privileged in the state to where GGC has protected me and I'm covered and I'm good. And you know what I mean? And I don't have these same issues that I know a lot of other people have. But I know a lot of other people will look at them and be like, oh, why aren't you trying harder? When really, this whole thing going back to COVID has created such a hysteria and just chaos in a lot of people's worlds. And so I want to make sure that we acknowledge that you're talking to somebody that, yeah, I've experienced. I mean, we're talking about what I've done with students and me altering, me seeing a black screen and stuff like that. But hey, man, I've gotten a paycheck every month. You know what I mean? I've continued to survive. My wife's continued to survive. My kids are still here, and we're still good. But what about the people that aren't? What about the people that have lost loved ones? You know what I mean? And now they're by themselves and still can't even work. What does that mean for them? So I want to at least, I'm sorry I interrupted you. I know I interrupted you. That is my fault. But I at least wanted to make sure that I said that in my being and in my conscience, because if I would have hung up this phone and in my brain as an old guy, if I didn't go back to it and I forgot, I would have felt really bad about not saying that. So I want to make sure that I at least give us a little pause or a little interim to where I can just say those words. So I acknowledge you, or we acknowledge you, me and Flynn, Heathcliff on this call. We acknowledge you and we love you, and that's it.
I'm glad you said that's actually a perfect way to end, and we've actually reached our limit as far as time. I'm glad you brought that up, because it really made me think back to my experiences, and I think everybody went through that initial paranoia, especially when it first hit and not knowing what was going to happen. And then as things went on, you have to start being present because things are changing.
Right.
And fortunately for me, a lot of things aligned in my favor. But it wasn't the same case for some of my friends. It wasn't the same case for some of the students in my classes. So, I did the best I could for myself, and I feel like I could have done a better job of being there for other people.
I am for we are. We are, therefore I am. It's all of us together. You know what I mean? And Flynn, I will say, to be honest with you, even don't diminish or reduce what you've done for people, because at the end of the day, even me and you in our exchanges and our interactions, every time I see you, I have a smile on my face, because I'm being very serious. Like, that energy that you bring, just when I'm around you, it makes me feel better. So even if you didn't do anything like verbally, or like to where it's like just like known, like, hey, I'm saying this, there are things that you may have done for somebody else that you may not even acknowledge, you know what I mean, or that you may not even know. So don't discount that, right? That the idea of just sitting next to you and just that energy that you have, it might lift me up, even if you don't say a word to me. You know what I mean? So while you might say, oh, I wish I could have said more or done more or whatever, blah, 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 that all of us probably feel that way. But your presence in this world, or at least I feel like your energy is contagious to a lot of people. And at least it's contagious to me, because when I'm around you, I just feel better, right? So don't diminish that unspoken, those unspoken things that you do as well. I feel like even though you can't acknowledge them because you didn't see them or you didn't talk about them, it doesn't mean that they're not existing.
Sheesh, that's so true. you changed my perspective over here.
All right, well, yeah, you changed mine too, as always. As always. All right, so let me know. But if there's anything else you want to talk about, if you want to do a follow-up or whatnot, or if we're good, let me know. I hope I did the interview, I guess, justice. And if I did not, my apologies. But I was trying to be as authentic as I can, and that's where we are.
I think you did a really great job. Let me bring this home real quick. This was the Grizzly Growl with your host, Flynn Heathcliff. And I just want to thank you for your time and your perspective, Dr. Lewis.
You're more than welcome. Thank you so much for giving me the platform.
And we're out.